As so many others, I was following the search for the Titan sub. At the time, we didn't know if they were still alive or if the submarine had imploded, but for me, the thing that made me stop was that there was a father and a son who were down there to celebrate Father's Day. Especially since the son apparently was terrified of going down and only did it to bond with his father. Being a father myself, I couldn't stop thinking about what would it be like to be down there with my son and being so helpless to protect him. There were lots of experts who were being interviewed and to give their opinion and what the odds were of them being alive and then what the rescue procedure would look like. Then there was this one man who stood out to me, which was an ABC science editor who had actually been down to the Titanic for a story. What caught my interest was not that he was an expert or had special knowledge, but rather that while he was down there, they got stuck under one of the propellers of the Titanic wreck, and he experienced something which he described almost like a religious or supernatural experience. There's this phenomenon that can happen when we are forced into extreme situations such as a car accident or finding out someone we know has been in an accident. And the bizarre thing is, it makes us feel calm and at ease without any negative emotions, even though we are in a life or, well, not necessarily death, but identity-threatening situation. And it doesn't have to be a physically dangerous situation either. A participant in one of my meditation classes once shared that he had been in a car accident, and while the car was flipping over up in the air, he couldn't stop being amazed at how beautiful the reflections were at the hood of his car as it was spinning around in the air and about to hit the ground. He had no fear of dying, no worry, but instead, he was just observing these beautiful reflections that were happening right then on his car. The man in the interview who was stuck on the propeller of the Titanic, he described how he had first tried to figure out if there's anything he could do to help. And upon realizing that he couldn't, he experienced sadness and thought of how he would never going to be able to see his wife or his family again, and that he'd rest down there with all the thousands of people who had lost their lives when the Titanic sunk. But then he experienced something unexplainable to him. In his words, something happened that caused me to experience a peace that I can't understand, that is unreasonable in many ways under that circumstance. What these people are describing is a spontaneous, non-dualistic experience, or a non-centered experience, as I like to call it, since the term non-dualistic carries with it certain ideologies and dogmas that are completely unnecessary. The mechanics of what is happening is that we experience something that either puts our life in acute danger or something that changes our worldview so deeply that it makes our identity and certainty of who we are glitch and temporarily just drops away. Not because of the experience, but because we surrender to the change and realize that we can't do anything about it. Or we are so shocked that we don't even try to mentally fight what we have just learned. This is not a mental exercise that you can recreate or somehow think yourself into. Rather, it's a separate system that is constantly reacting and relating to everything outside and inside of us. Now, when we don't know how to interpret or handle an extreme experience like this, the sense of self can just drop away, creating this beautiful world where we have nothing to protect and we are able to see the world as it really is without a filter. All of a sudden, you're able to fully appreciate reality just like a child in whom these processes haven't really had time to take over fully yet. But as soon as we try to grasp it or we start fighting it, it just starts to fade away. With what we now know, the passengers of the Titan very likely had no idea what happened, since the catastrophic implosion would have been instantaneous. Their brains wouldn't even had time to register it. 1 minute, they might have been filled with anticipation of being close to the wreck, and the next, they were no more. Like I've heard so many say, At least it is some consolation that the end was quick and they didn't have to suffer down there for days in complete darkness and cold. If you'd like to learn more about non-centered experiences and how to tell if you have ever been in or currently are in one, I made this video here where I go into more detail about the subject.